بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسولنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum everybody. This is our third week of the webinar that we focus on the topic of hereafter. And as we all know, we are focusing on the tafsir called Risale-i Nur by Bediüzzaman Said Nursi. And we are trying to follow up a method called muzakara. So we are focusing on the text, read through it, and then inshallah we want to share what we understand. Our speakers this week is, again, we have brother Dr. Colin Turner from Durham, England, and Tawafuk, again from Durham, North Carolina.
We pronounce as Durham.
Durham, okay. Sorry about that. Durham, North Carolina.
He pronounced it correctly, actually. It's Durham. He was spot on.
Then the spelling is Tawafuk. It's not the how we say it.
In America, I think they do it differently.
Yeah. Okay. So we have brother Colin and brother Mustafa and myself this week. Inshallah, we will try to also get some questions at the end. Before starting reading, any comments, any questions? I guess we can just Bismillah start reading. So until now, this is a major concept mentioned in the Quran often. After Tawheed, we focus on the afterlife, so we are trying to make sense why it is required to believe in it, how we can be sure about this particular pillar of faith, and what is the evidence or examples in our lives for it. And the major method is we try to focus on the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we witness, we take shahada in the universe, and we try to speak on them. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So this week we will talk on generosity, karam, and beauty, jamal. These attributes, names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right? Jude and
Jude, yes. Is it at all possible that infinite generosity and liberality, the open-heartedness, right, open-handedness, liberality, inexhaustible riches, unending treasuries, peerless and eternal beauty, flawless and everlasting perfection, should not require the existence of grateful supplicants, yearning spectators, and astounded onlookers, all destined to stay an eternity in an abode of bliss, a place of repose. So this is kind of our summary of the topic. So does this require or necessitate or give the result of this? We'll try to understand or discuss this in extent. So we are starting with some examples on this. Again, for you can follow up on your screens, or it is included in the 10th word of the book Words on the chapters about resurrection and the hereafter. Is it at all possible that infinite generosity and liberality, inexhaustible riches, unending treasuries, peerless and eternal beauty, flawless and everlasting perfection should not require the existence of grateful supplicants, yearning spectators, and astounded onlookers, all destined to stay an eternity in an abode of bliss, a place of repose? Do you want to say anything about this
Since
introduction
this is the
statement?
first time I'm joining, I wanted to see if you read through the entire text and then go back to the beginning and start discussion, or you go piece by piece.
Usually we go one by one or two or three
Okay.
slides and then discuss. So
okay. I mean, as I said, this is I'm kind of a guest here. Dr. Turner has been here before. If he would like to go ahead, I would defer to him.
I'm not sure whether I have anything to say at the moment. I mean,
okay.
Maybe a little bit more if we go ahead a little bit more.
Okay, let me just add maybe one thing. It's not about the content, but about the translation to make things a bit perhaps more clear. Jude and Sahaba are two words that are used in Turkish, and they are borrowed from Arabic. Jude is generous. I think that's more clear and easier to understand. Sahaba, however, is somebody who is generous and also has all the means to give. So open-handed profusion, or it has the meaning of both open-handedness and generosity, and also profusion. So somebody can be generous but not have the means. So he gives you his smile and his prayers and supplications, and you see that this person is opening up his heart to you, etc., etc. There's a lot of generosity there, but you don't go to that person when you need a loan. When you run out of something, you don't go to that person because he does not have it. So here, the bringing together of Jude and Sahaba indicates that this person or this quality is both generous and also has everything in profusion, and you can go there for your needs. And then the word that's translated as grateful supplicants is in Turkish, one second, muhtaç şakirler. So the word muhtaç is actually needy. So needy people who are grateful for what they are receiving. And for those who are familiar with the paradigms, the world of the Risale-i Nur, that is obviously a very important concept. Neediness is something that connects the human being to his Lord. So I think the rest should be relatively more easy, clear to understand, inshallah.
Yes, adorning the face of the world with all these objects of beauty, creating the moon and the sun as its lamps, filling the surface of the earth with the finest varieties of the sustenance, and thus making it a banquet of bounty, making fruit trees into so many dishes, and renewing them several times each season. All this shows the existence of infinite generosity and liberality. Such unending liberality and generosity, such inexhaustible treasuries of mercy, require the existence of an abode of repose, a place of bliss that shall be everlasting and contain all desirable objects within it. Again, I guess at this point, we are very much considering our own life experience, observations, and our human feelings. We are trying to get to the conclusion. And we have a limited life, as we talked on the previous weeks. We have a limited access to the reality sometimes, but we are trying to make the sense of the absolute, because we want to understand the names and attributes of Allah, who will bring the afterlife for us. So trying to pay attention to that, I just wanted to give an example that comes to my mind and ask my speakers if it makes sense. So now we are talking about this generosity that we want to see in we see in the universe, we observe in the universe. So let's say I was fasting the whole day, and I was invited to this grandma's house or this beloved friend's house who is known with his hospitality, right? So when I go there, I'm kind of sure that I'll be satisfied. It's kind of without question. I just kind of submit myself to the hands of the host, that because I'm so sure about his generosity, hospitality. So it's kind of the same feeling in this universe. It's coming in so abundance, plentiful, and wherever we look at, it's kind of this same feeling. It is coming in so huge amounts for everybody. So let me read it again. Adorning the face of the world with all these objects of beauty, creating the moon and the sun as its lamps, filling the surface of the earth with finest varieties of sustenance, and thus making it a banquet of bounty, making fruit trees into so many dishes, and renewing them several times each season. All this shows the existence of infinite generosity and liberality. And I guess in this banquet, many things are talking to our human qualities, feelings. That, for example, when you go to a host's house, a beloved friend's house or grandma's house, you have the finest china, you have the finest tablecloth, you have the best dishes. Everything is talking kind of to us, to satisfy and to please, and to give us the best feeling that makes the connection to those things. So in this universe, when we step in and have the conscience to start observing around, it's kind of a same feeling. Such an ending liberality and generosity, such inexhaustible treasuries of mercy require the existence of an abode of repose, a place of bliss that shall be everlasting and contain all desirable objects within it. So what I want to ask is about this word of requirement. So what do we understand from this word? How can we translate it, or how can we digest it? Because we know that nothing is required for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who will definitely, will bring the akhirah that we expect the akhirah to bring. So what does this requirement means for him? Can we talk about his attributes, names in this means? Anybody wants to step in, Brother Colin, or in this sense?
I understand it as necessitating that his attributes of perfection have certain corollaries. Things follow on from those necessarily, in a sense. That's from our perspective. So endless liberality and endless generosity would necessitate recipients of that generosity, recipients of that liberality. So demanding and requiring, they sound quite imperious terms to use about Allah. But I think if we understand it as necessitating, it's a follow-on, and maybe that is a more felicitous way of talking about requirement or demand. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, first off, in Turkish the word is istemek, so to want, or maybe call for.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are places where the translation would be more apt as require. So I'm not going to exclude that altogether from our conversation about God. Lazım or lüzum etmek, for instance, could be better to translate as require. And then there's another word, iktiza, etmek, which would be entail. And then here istemek would be to call for, and necessitate, I would say, is something that brings them all together. This is not a new thing in the tradition. This is something that has been discussed in the tradition before. When Imam Ghazali, for instance, when he says there is nothing better than, there is nothing in the realm of possibilities better than what is, right? So this was criticized. Imam Ghazali was criticized for saying this because some said, okay, do you mean that God cannot create better than what is here? I had at some point listened to the commentary of, I'm blanking out about his name. He was martyred at the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus. It's called Bouti, Sheikh Ramadan al-Bouti, rahimahullah alayh. I had heard his commentary about this, and what he said was that we live in a world and we make sense of the world that we are living in. And there is an order in this world that we live in. According to the order that we are familiar with, that we are subject to, and that our intellect and inferences are subject to, according to the norms of this realm, this is required. That cannot be better, that can be imagined, right? But this does not bind God. When we talk about these issues, one thing that perhaps we should make clear from the get-go, from the beginning, is that, for instance, in Islamic logic, now logic is borrowed from the Greek tradition by Muslims, but in Islamic logic, the topic, the subject of analysis is the creation. It does not apply to the creator. So from the get-go, you make a distinction. You say, here is the creator, and here is the creation, and everything that we talk about with logic, right, applies to the creation. The creator is beyond our conception in his entity and in his reality, and beyond the restrictions that our mental processes, mental patterns and rules, norms can entail, necessitate. So in logic, when we say iktiza etmek, entail, and that is the word that we use when we do formal inferences in syllogisms, all right? We don't imagine that that's going to be binding for God, we're going to be requiring God. However, what we are responsible for as human beings, as conscious human beings who have partial will and a responsibility to know God, right? What we are responsible for is evaluating the patterns, the information, the norms, the signs that are presented to us in the abode, in the world that we are living in. So if you go back to Sheikh Bouti's commentary over there, according to what we are presented with, right? This is entailed or called for or required or necessitated. And once we make these put these caveats out there, you can use any of these words. However, to be more clear here, a better translation would be to call for.
Yeah, I think it's understood that no one would construe that we are obligating God to any particular course of action. It's just the limitations of human language, as you said, circumscribed obviously by our limitations of understanding. The finite trying to understand the absolute always throws up these anomalies. As long as we are, of the same understanding that we're not obligating God to any particular course of action, obviously, and that we're speaking as beings who are embedded in the causal nexus. And obviously, we are prone to all of the infirmities of understanding and language that such an embedding brings about. So I think that is understood as long as we're careful. I think that's not a problem. I was thinking here is a materialist would probably say, well, how do we know that the riches that we're talking about are inexhaustible and unending? I think that's the adjectives that were used. The first thing I think we do have to ascertain is whether these riches that we're talking about are actually inexhaustible. Are they endless? Are they boundless? And I think from our own observations, from what we see, that would appear to be the case, even if you just look at the cosmos synchronically, you know, looking at it not over a period of time, by looking at the whole of the creation as it is now, in one moment, we can see, you know, if you stop time and you looked, you can see that there is an infinite or potentially infinite number of instants of being, each instant of which reflects certain names and attributes or certain permutations of names and attributes. And you were talking about personal experience. I had an experience recently with a mushroom. I found a really, really big mushroom. And one of those large kinds of mushrooms, which produces about 1 billion spores in a single day. Now, if those billion spores were to come to fruition, it would produce 1 billion mushrooms, and that would cover more than, someone told me, 10 square kilometers of land. So what is producing this vast profusion of future mushrooms is nothing more than the generosity that Ustad Nursi is talking about, which knows no bounds, and a generosity which seems to have absolutely no limits whatsoever. That is just a single creature, a single being, a mushroom, maybe 6 inches in diameter. So this much can be understood from a single mushroom, a single creature, created by a being out of sheer generosity and grace. So I think it is safe to assume that there is an unending, literally unending, and inexhaustible source of riches.
So can we say that we are not analyzing or evaluating a certain attribute of God directly, but we are analyzing our own relation with him? So the way he treats us until now, that our observations about his treatment, the hosts in this world treatment to us, shows that it's gonna be willing to do it in the future in the same way or in a better way, in abundance. Can we say that? So not a requirement, but it's the way it's coming shows that it's gonna be continuous, it's gonna be satisfying, it's gonna be unending way, you know.
I have a feeling if we think about the two attributes that are brought together in this truth, in this passage, right? Jud and Jamal, generosity and beauty. If we think about it, I think this could be understood even better. First of all, I think what you are saying is accurate. We are not talking about the entity of God, but the manifestations of his names and attributes in the creation and our interaction with those manifestations and names. And at that level, Ustad Nursi brought generosity and beauty together. And the way this makes sense to me is, generosity, especially when he couples it in these meanings with the word need, right, is about meeting the needs about a person or whatever. Let's use the example of a person, right? Of a person. And also Jude implies that he gives it without being asked for. So he's generous, and his generosity has the connotation, nuance of giving without being asked for. And when he gives, he meets the needs of the needy ones, right? But this does not have to be in profusion or the way it is happening now. As I said, the way this makes sense to me is, as a human being, I need nutrition. So what is it? Imagine those like pyramids or whatever. I need carbohydrates, protein, fat in liquid and vitamins and so on and so forth. All of this could be in the form of a tasteless paper-like substance that I would have to force myself to eat. And my need would be met, right? But that's
survive,
not
to survive, yes.
yeah, I mean, I would feel like I have to eat this. I feel hungry, and I have to put something in through my mouth. Like imagine when astronauts go to the space, even there is some variation and taste, etc., etc. Imagine even that did not exist. Only like maybe an IV, put in the vein. That could be the case, but it is not. There is beauty. Immersed. We are immersed in beauty. We are only talking about the function of taste now. We eat peach, we eat orange, we eat like meat and dairy and this and that. There are millions of tastes, and then you combine those tastes, and there a combination. Like from the combination, we have millions of different tastes, and not only that, we are also given the ability to sense those tastes. Right? So who is doing this? Who is doing this to me? Right? Obviously, whoever is doing this to me wants to please me, wants to give me joy. Is not, skimping on things. Is not, dropping nutrition in my mouth with a dropper, but giving it to me in abundance and with beauty. There is a sense of profusion and generosity in the sense of pleasing, giving joy too, not only in the sense of meeting the needs, but also in the sense of giving joy. And that requires, I'm using the word require, right, in the context that we explained. That requires that there is someone out there who is giving all of this without skimping, with profusion, with liberality, with generosity to me. And on top of that, we can add what Dr. Turner said, right? There is, this is more personal, this is more subjective, but there's also this objectively verifiable generosity out there, right? I mean, mashallah, that's a beautiful example. 1 billion spores, and then you end up having like 3-4 mushrooms that are coming out of it. Is it waste? Right? So, 1 billion minus 4 mushrooms, is that waste? No. These are all signs of creator. This has a message to give. It is not just there to be, destroyed in nature somehow. It is there to tell us something. It is telling us, look, whoever is doing this, right? He has inexhaustible treasures. It is not difficult for him to create 1 billion spores for 3 mushrooms. He is generous, right? And another example that Ustad Nursi provides elsewhere is, at the given moment in our personal environment, we see things in limited numbers. Right now, I'm looking out a window and I see, I see grass out there, and perhaps there are, let's say, 100,000 blades of grass. Even though if 100,000 looks like a large number, it is limited. Compared to infinite, it is nothing at 100,000 blades of grass and, 50 trees and, 3 birds, 5 this, 6 that, right? In my personal environment, it appears to be limited. However, I walk 100 meters down the street and I see it there too. I take a plane and go to another country and I see it there too. Or I saw this yesterday, I'm seeing it today. So it is the example Ustad Nursi uses for this. It is as if these blessings, these artifacts are oozing out of a rock. The way, if you imagine, a rock at the skirts of a mountain, water oozes out, right? It is as if that water is oozing out and it's continuously and continually oozing out, which means that there is something somewhere, a reservoir, which compared to what I see here that is oozing out is tremendously bigger because it has been oozing out perhaps like 3,000 years go back, and then it will be continuing to ooze out 3,000 years from now, right? There is a continual giving in there. That means that whoever is giving this continual has unending treasures.
Thank you. Brother Colin, you want to add anything?
Yeah, it's interesting that Brother Mustafa mentioned waste, because going back to the example of the mushroom, I've heard materialists criticizing the creator on account of this very issue. They see the billions of spores being created and they realize that not every spore will become a mushroom. So then they declare that, you know, the releasing of billions of spores is wasteful. You know, I've heard that very adjective, wasteful, used to describe what happens, you know, when mushrooms procreate. But obviously what's happening here is that the materialist mind, which is by default instrumentalist and consequentialist, as we know, the materialist mind can't understand why so many spores are being created if they're not going to be used in the creation of new mushrooms. What they forget, I contend, is that the creation isn't there just for humankind. While the creation looks to humankind, it's not created solely for the sake of human beings. You know, the creation is created as much for the sake of its creator as for humankind. So we can ascertain quite easily by studying the creation, you know, even studying it synchronically, by, you know, stopping motion and looking at everything like a picture, that the one who creates the creation is generous beyond compare. And again, Brother Mustafa used the word profusion. This profusion is there whether there are recipients or not.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, it's not in as a reaction to need or to request, but the profusion is there anyway.
Mm-hmm. So in a way, if we can benefit from it, or any of the creation kind of is benefiting from it, it makes sense to us. But here in the example that we read, I guess, first of all, the creator introduces himself to us. So the action that we observe, that we experience, or we benefit from is looking to him, first of all, right? So the host would offer us satisfying amount of goods, but we can afford to eat or benefit just a small amount of it, right? Not all of it, but he wouldn't push us to eat all. So in kind of I can maybe take it in that way. So Allah shows us his unending treasuries, his capability of giving unendingly, but on the same way, we cannot be, the subject of the end result of everything. It is, of course, first of all, looks to his own generosity, his own hospitality, his own karam and jud.
I think so. I think you're right.
I want to move on to this next slide, inshallah. They also require that those who enjoy such bliss should remain in that abode of repose eternally, without suffering the pain of cessation and separation. They also require that those who enjoy such bliss should remain in that abode of repose eternally, without suffering the pain of cessation and separation. For just as the cessation of pain is a form of pleasure, so too the cessation of pleasure is a form of pain, one that such infinite generosity is unwilling to permit. It requires then the existence both of an eternal paradise and of supplicants to abide in it eternally. Brother Mustafa, you want to step in, or I can?
Let me try to absorb it a bit more first.
Okay. Brother Colin, any comments? I can just go on to the next one or pause.
No, I think that Ustad Nursi is quite clear on this, that infinite generosity is meaningless unless there are recipients to access and to acknowledge and to enjoy that generosity eternally. An infinite number, in fact, if we take, you know, the humble mushroom as an example of divine munificence and largesse, it also requires a place that is, from every perspective we can imagine, appropriate for the eternal manifestation of eternal generosity, you know, in front of an infinitely large and temporally eternal audience. So Ustad Nursi is quite clear on this. And he uses things like it requires and it demands. Because for him, it's quite clear that, you know, an eternal beauty needs an eternal lover to actually appreciate that beauty. Eternal beauty can't be content with a temporary lover, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It will be willing or wanting it. Yes.
Yeah. And also combining the notion of beauty in this truth, and obviously that relates to mercy, you know, to bring that notion into what's happening is we look around, we see this generosity, we see this liberality, profusion, Jude and Sahaba. We see that everything is being provided without even having to ask for, and then provided in abundance, right? The tree needs perhaps a gallon of water a day, but then rain is pouring down, right? All of this is happening, and we see that there is this presentation of generosity with beauty, which indicates mercy being shown, and also indicates that the source of this is beautiful in such a way that the existence of that beauty and mercy and generosity cannot be reconciled with anything that is ugly or bad or evil, whatever we are going to put that's negative, right? And then if all these joys, all these blessings, bestowals, enjoyments, pleasures were to be temporal, transient, doomed to become annihilated, that would be ugly. So based on what we see in the world as indicating the creator of this world, we cannot reconcile our conception of the world and the way it is being created and our understanding of its creator with the temporality of this world. It just doesn't make sense. It cannot come to an end. If it were to come to an end, there would be pain in it. And we know that he did not create us. He did not put us here. He did not give us all these senses in order to pain us. That would not be reconcilable with the pleasure and profusion and beauty and mercy that he is showing to us.
An eternal beauty cannot be content with an impermanent admirer, a mortal lover. Since beauty loves itself, it desires love in return for its love. Transience and impermanence transform such love into enmity. If man was going to go to eternity and remain there permanently, in place of innate love of eternal beauty, there would be enmity. As is described in a footnote in 10th word, one time a celebrated beauty expelled a lover from her presence, whereupon his love turned into enmity, and in order to console himself, he said, "Ah, how ugly she is," thus insulting and denying her beauty. So can we talk about this particular feeling we have in order to understand the continuation of these bounties that we observe in this world? I guess Mustafa abi talk about a little bit, but maybe this was an explanation.
Could you repeat the question, Makarab? I think I missed it.
So what we observe in this world, in this universe, and what we experience kind of shows us the continuation of it, you know. Otherwise, it just turns into the opposite. That we want to, this feeling of us is a way, it's showing us the continuation of it, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
You little bit reflected on this in your comment, but I don't know if Brother Colin wants to say more, or this was a explanation of it, this particular paragraph.
I think this is something that we all feel, isn't it? You know, the pain that we feel in the world is the pain of absence always. So beauty is truly beautiful only if it's eternal. Because when beauty fades and goes and ugliness takes its place, then, as Ustad points out, love gives way to enmity and sadness. It's the same with other names as well, like justice. Justice is truly just only if it's eternal, because when justice goes and its opposite comes in its place, injustice, then that love of justice turns to hate and sorrow. And I think this is something that we can all experience ourselves. The pain that we always feel in the world is the pain of absence. But you know, this is part and parcel of being in the world, since you know this world is a realm in which the attributes of perfection are not manifest absolutely. And this is, you know, the very crux of the argument today, in this piece that we're reading. The limitations of this realm don't allow the attributes of perfection to be made manifest in their absoluteness. And that is exactly why the hereafter is necessary.
But I guess there is a feeling of absoluteness in the need. Is that right? Because even though, you know, we could be the wealthiest person, we could have spent like hundreds of years in this world. Maybe I lived until 150, or you know, I taste all the pleasures of the world, but still, if it does not continue, I'm not satisfied. Yeah. I don't want to take it.
Absolutely.
You know, it's kind of I'm not saying that, oh, okay, enough, he gave me, you know, this much, this, you know, requires thankfulness, so I will be contented with it. I don't, you know, it's just wants to, very interestingly, wants more.
Yeah, I think that, you know, happiness in this world, we can never be truly happy in this world because of this. We can only attain a kind of, you know, resigned contentment, or if you like, a kind of contented resignation. And that's part of the taslimiyah of a believer. The submission to the fact that we are not going to be given absolute perfection in this world, and we shouldn't expect it. It's the expectation of the absoluteness in this world which causes all of our problems. And if you are a materialist who doesn't believe, then everything for you is limited. And that's why there will be this kind of rapacious competition always with other people for limited resources, because they see things as limited, and that's why they fight for them. We, on the other hand, if we are believers, then we are resigned to the fact that we're never going to be given all of the absolute perfections in this world. We know that they exist, but we know because of the limitations in this world, which is finite and temporal and transient, that they have to be postponed to a world where they all fit, which is the world of the hereafter.
We want eternity. That is, you know, hardwired to our existence.
Right? Desperately, we want it, yeah.
Yeah, and we know that there are certain circumstances that are pleasing to us, and there are certain circumstances that are not pleasing to us. burning in fire is not pleasing to us. But being invited to a feast, the sense of felicity, the sense of being loved, the sense of company, the taste of the delicious food, the smell of the beautiful flower, and so on and so forth. Like put all of these together and try to come up with an appellation to a name to represent, signify all of them. We will call it the garden, Jannah, right? So we know that we are satisfied in that context, and we are not satisfied in other contexts. Now, we want eternity, and that is hardwired, and there is no reason for us to give for it. We don't need justification for that, right? But if you were presented eternity and not given the satisfying circumstances, then eternity would become torture too, right? So we want eternity, and we want the pleasing circumstances in eternity, but we never give up the desire for eternity. So even if it was torture, we still want eternity. It is not, subject to discussion, right? But we want eternity in these beautiful circumstances that we want. And we also see that in this world, as we are experiencing it, we are presented with beauty. So therefore, we expect that beauty from the one who gave it to us here in the eternity that is absolutely not open to debate and discussion, that's hardwired to our existence. I also wanted to perhaps we could talk about this concept of beauty. An eternal beauty cannot be content with an impermanent admirer, a mortal lover. Since beauty loves itself, it desires love in return for its love. If we were to ask the same kinds of questions that we ask about, can God be obliged to anything, but restricted to anything? Does God need anything? Does God need lovers, etc.? I think that could lead us to somewhere where perhaps there could be some insights building up. I'm thinking about the notion of beauty, right? What is beauty? Like, I look at a rose flower and I think it is beautiful, but does the lion that also sees the same rose flower think that it is beautiful, or have that sense of beauty? Or I apologize for the example, but I look at a heap of cow excrement and I think it is ugly. But the chicken who looks at that heap full of worms, etc., probably thinks that it is delicious and is beautiful, right? So what is beauty in this case? So I'm thinking perhaps a working definition, and this is open to discussion, we can change it if necessary, but a working definition might be an input and something that makes an impression on our consciousness that is attractive to us. Say that creates a force of attraction, right? And if we were to move from there, we could define that force of attraction as love. So something makes an impression on our consciousness that produces this force of attraction in our consciousness or being in general, and we define that as love. So at the foundation of all of these arguments is the notion that beauty and perfection are loved for their own sake. You don't need justification to love beauty and perfection. I will, again, as a working definition, say that is because that is the definition of beauty and perfection. Beauty and perfection is that which creates this force of attraction that creates love, right? So if we are given beauty to experience, that means we are given love, right? And we are also given the love of the continuity of beauty because it is hardwired into our existence. Now, the next question is, so what do we expect from the one who gave all of this to us, right? And then we come back to the same conclusion. Transience and impermanence transform such love into enmity, because the force of attraction continues. But the object that is making the impression of beauty in my consciousness and therefore causing the force of attraction, and then it has this permanence in me because I have the impression in my consciousness continually, right? Disappearing. I'm left dangling in the air. I don't know where to go with that attraction, right? That is very torturing, right? So can I look around, see the world as it is, with all the beauty and perfection that it presents, and see that there is profusion, continuity, and liberality in this, right? The things come and go, but the attributes that make them lovable for me continue. Can this be the case? And then the one who is creating this just bring it all to an end, abrupt end, while I am hardwired to want to continue in a state of bliss. It seems like it is not possible. That's the logical conclusion that my mind takes me to.
Yeah, I think it's not so much the beauty or the love that we want for their own sake. I think it's the giver of love and the beautiful one that we love for his own sake. There is no other reason. Because as much beauty as we see in this world, we still want more. And that can never, ever be satisfied. And even in the next world, the only way that we can be satisfied is if we are in the presence of the one who possesses all of these attributes at the absolute level. Because as they are manifest in things, in states, in situations and circumstances, we can never, ever get enough of them because, you know, however much we have, we still want more. That tells me that the only being that we can love for its own sake is Allah.
Yeah.
Nothing else will satisfy us.
We want the source.
We want the source, yeah. You know, you love your mum's apple pie, but you love your mum, you know. However much apple pie you have, if she's not there, it's not going to do the trick. It's not going to work. So we want the source. We can't be satisfied with anything less. And I think that's why happiness in this realm is impossible. I mean, that poses the question, why does there have to be a realm of transience at all? You know, why is there a Darul Fani? But obviously, the whole point of limitation is in order for us to understand what unlimitedness and what absoluteness are. And without this transient, limited, finite, and seemingly imperfect world, we wouldn't be able to understand anything. But we shouldn't fall foul of this satanic trick, which is to make us think that this is the only world. Because then we will never, ever be happy. And this is what materialists can't fathom. And this true taslimiyya, you know, true submission is to submit to the fact that all of the attributes of perfection are manifest here, but they're not manifest in their absolute sense. And that the only absolute manifestation or something approximating the absolute manifestation will be in the next world, where we will be in the presence of the source of these attributes of perfection.
I guess I can just go through this last paragraph because it kind of talks about the same reality. Let me go through it, and we are in the last 5 minutes, so maybe we can end up with ending comments or maybe a last question. Indeed, man is hostile to what is unfamiliar to him, in the same way that he quite simply wishes to be hostile to and discover the faults of things he cannot obtain or possess. Since, as the whole universe testifies, the true beloved and absolutely beautiful one causes man to love himself through his most beautiful names, which are altogether exquisite, and desires man to love him, then most certainly he will not endow man who is both his beloved and his lover with an innate enmity and cause him to be vexed with himself from afar. He would not endow man's spirit with a hidden enmity which would be altogether contrary to man's nature, who is by his nature the most lovable and loving creature and the most exceptional that he has created. The most lovable and loving creature and the most exceptional that he has created. Yeah. For man would only be able to cure the deep wounds caused by eternal separation from an absolute beauty that he loves and whose value he appreciates through enmity towards it, being vexed with and denying it. It's from this point that the enmity towards Allah Almighty of the unbelievers arises, in which case the eternal beauty will surely make manifest in man a perpetual life in a permanent realm in order to be present together with him who is an enraptured mirror to himself on the journey to post-eternity, to Abad. We have a question saying that, how we can observe the absoluteness in a limited world. I guess we talk about it, but to just wrap up, to close, any conclusion remarks or reflections on this last paragraphs or the question?
About that question, we cannot comprehend absoluteness as it is in its in its entitative reality. We cannot comprehend absoluteness, but we can know that there is absoluteness. And the way perhaps to help us understand this is, imagine in geometry, what is what symbolizes a line that goes to infinity, right? You draw a line and then you put an arrow. Now you look at that and you say, okay, this line goes to infinity, right? But the actual thing that you are seeing in front of you does not go to infinity. It is a limited line, but the arrow indicates infinity. So what we observe is the continuity and the profusion and continuity. What we observe is that the one who is doing this, creating this, is capable of doing that, and he put the desire for eternity in us. That is the arrowhead at the end of the line, right? We know that he is merciful to us. We know that he is presenting his generosity packaged in beauty to us. We know that beauty, that packaging and the sensation, joy of beauty that we are experiencing requires this to be continuous because it is built in us. It's hardwired to us. That is the arrowhead. And therefore, we know that it is absolute. It is endless, boundless, right? But in its actual nature, entitative reality, we cannot comprehend that. That is beyond our capacity, right?
Brother Colin, any closing remarks?
No, I think that was the perfect way of summing up. Perfect answer to the question. I can't say anything better than that.
Thank you. Bobby, closing prayer, you can just go, or I can read from the screen.
Oh, me? You say me?
Yeah.
سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. O God, O most merciful one, O most compassionate one, O single one, O ever-living one, O self-subsistent one, O sapient one, O all just one, O most holy one. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, Ya Fard, Ya Hayy, Ya Qayyum, Ya Hakam, Ya Al, Ya Quddus.
Okay.
help us to see the beauty in your creation, to see reality as reality is. And when we do that, we are going to see that reality is beautiful, and help us to appreciate this beauty, so that through that appreciation, we can travel to you and be with you as the source of that beauty forever, inshallah. Al-Fatiha.
I want to thank you and all those who joined us this week. Inshallah, we want to leave you for this week until we meet for the next week's discussion. Inshallah, it will be again on the hereafter. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you very much.